This TSN 1040 podcast is powered by Metro Ford. The deal you've been waiting for is on now. Ford employee pricing. Details at metromotors.com.
Good evening. Welcome to Vancouver Canadians Game Day, powered by Booster Juice. Rob Fay is taking a well-deserved night off after a long road trip and so far a long homestand. And Niall, as you were mentioning early, a long day at the ballpark.
It was a long day at the ballpark. Things did not go well for the hometown nine as the Seas losing to the Tri-City Dust Devils by a score of 6-0. So they lost the series 2 games out of 3. So it's just one of those days. Who knows? Maybe the Seas are looking ahead to Spokane. That's going to be a huge series this weekend as they'll be taking going at it. That's for the top spot in the second half of the North Division. Right now, the Seas are just going to have to lay back and see what unfolds between Everett and Spokane. See, that would have been the nice thing if the Seas had taken care of business today. They could kind of sit back, relax, and see what happens in Spokane with the Aqua Sox and the Indians. But now they, I guess, more or less really are cheering for Everett to win that game tonight because Everett's they're home free. They have a playoff spot already locked up. The Seas, their job is just stay ahead of both Tri-City and Spokane. Tri-City, they've had a tough start to the second half, despite winning 2 out of 3 this afternoon, wrapping that up again with a 6-0 victory. But as long as they can stay ahead of Spokane and Tri-City, the Seas will be in the playoffs for the second half.
Rob Fay will be joining us in about 20 minutes, and we'll catch up some more on the Seas. But we're going to kick off the show with a couple of breaking stories, actually. And this all has to do with, let's just say boys being boys, men being men, some tempers flaring.
Yes.
Last 2 days, we've seen 2 incidents in Major League Baseball. One was now, though, brawl. The other one was kind of a scrum. We like to call them baseball scrums. But some suspensions have been handed out. Yasuil Puig suspended 2 games for his incident a couple nights ago, and MLB has suspended Jose Urena 6 games for that first pitch,
which basically works out to 1 start.
It's 1 start. I don't get this one at all. And for those of you who aren't aware, Osuna, sparkling rookie for the Braves, was on a home run streak, including 3 straight games of hitting leadoff home runs, including both ends of a doubleheader.
Right.
And gets drilled by a 97-mile-an-hour fastball, first pitch of the game last night against the Marlins. Now, Osuna, the pitcher who hit him, that basically is close to the peak of his speed. That's actually the fastest first pitch he's thrown all season long.
Yep.
And according to his manager, and you never hear this, but Don Mattingly came right out and said, we told him, don't hit the guy because young player is going to be good for a long time. You never hear a manager throw his pitcher under the bus unless they do something really stupid. And this does classify as stupid.
Yes.
Good news, Osuna's okay. Bad news.
Acuna, not Osuna.
Acuna. Bad news is, I think this suspension is way too short when it is so obvious that he threw at him.
Well, Lou, if you think about it, for a pitcher, as a starting pitcher, that is, as now just alluded to a moment ago, if you're suspending him for 6 games, that's really 1 start, in the rotation. And that is too short of a suspension. If you want to send a message to, teams, to pitchers, stop drilling guys, stop with this kind of retaliation nonsense. You got to send a message by suspending him for longer. And we could throw any number out there, but what would be a good suspension for, a starting pitcher? Because, again, 6 games, we're talking, you're missing a start. Boo-hoo, so what? And for a manager to come out and say, we told him not to do it, and he still did it, I mean, I couldn't understand that one.
Go from
Yeah. It's ridiculous. You don't want to see guys getting hurt. And, thankfully he wasn't thrown at his head or anything like that. But still, it's not a good look when Acuna was down. And who knows? I mean, you could break a bone in your forearm or something like that, or something in your elbow. Something could go wrong. But it's ridiculous. And really, I think maybe, and for, as we're talking about, 1 start really isn't enough. And if it's only 6 games, really, all a team has to do to get around that is maybe just give your starters an extra day's rest. That's not really much of a punishment.
No.
I mean, we have 6-day rotations going on in the minor leagues. Vancouver Canadians are one of the many teams who use a 6-man rotation, and and major leagues kind of do it too. You see Tampa Bay sometimes using openers and whatnot. So yeah, I think at least if the starting pitcher's involved, I think you'd have to say at least maybe 9-10 games, like make it more difficult. Maybe 8. I don't know. At minimum, I'm not sure, but I think it's got to be more than 6.
I'm thinking 20. I'm thinking he misses 4 games.
Yeah.
It really did surprise me. And there were a lot of people out there calling for a longer suspension because we've seen this before with pitchers. He got hit on the elbow. And he's okay. And we've heard this before when it comes to hockey punishment. If that X-ray comes up positive, do you think maybe MLB sends a bigger message and says, okay, now we're looking at 30?
Well, I would think if it's a superstar caliber player, like if it's a guy like Mike Trout, if it's a guy like Harper, a guy like that, if it's a superstar face of a franchise type player, I would say absolutely. The test comes up positive, and if Major League Baseball wants to send a message, I can see like a 20-game suspension for the pitcher, 30-game suspension. You want to send a message to teams, to managers, to sometimes pitchers are instructed by managers, to retaliate. You want to send a message, hey, this is not right for the game. We want to showcase our most talented players. We don't want anyone getting hurt, anyone getting injured, and pitchers are throwing faster and faster these days. In the major league staff, that you could have 3-4 guys throwing 100 miles per hour. It's the game has changed so much from 20, 30 years ago. Guys, if they get hit, you're talking about serious injuries potentially, and these could be career-ending, injuries if someone's hit in the wrong spot.
Back to the manager thing here. You brought it up. Sometimes managers say, and we know what happens.
Yeah.
Don Mattingly, like we said earlier, in an absolute, never seen this before, came out and basically said, yeah, we told him not to do it, and he went ahead and did it. And I'm wondering, because of course, Major League Baseball, like a lot of sports, if you've got guys who do stuff, they will suspend a manager as well. And he's already on a thin rope down there. This just, to me, kind of, and I hate to say this because I love Don Mattingly as a player, it sounds to me like he's just trying to save his own skin here.
Yeah, you know what? Someone who would take the pessimistic point of view could easily look at it that way, but I would like to think that Don Mattingly, he's, Yeah, I agree. I mean, I hate the New York Yankees with white hot passion of 1,000 suns, but, Don Mattingly, definitely a player you got to respect. I would say him and Mariano Rivera, as far as I'm concerned. Yankees, I absolutely respect. You never heard about Don Mattingly, shenanigans or extracurricular activities or anything like that.
Here's the thing, though. Like, would Mattingly want to stay on that team?
But that's kind of irrelevant, right?
Okay.
Whether he wants to stay or wants to go. I mean, if he wanted to leave, he can walk away tomorrow.
And he could have a job the next day or
I don't know about that. Unfortunately, his last 2 stops have not ended well. I mean, the Dodgers turned it around after he left.
That's right.
So that's generally a bad side if you're a manager. And there were a lot of hopes for him and stuff like that. But I mean, let's keep in mind Don Mattingly, might just have a playoff jinx with him because his first year with the Yankees was the year after they made the playoffs. And he was gone the year before they made the playoffs. So if you want to make the playoffs, stay away from Don Mattingly.
Actually, guys, there was an interesting story in USA Today about Ronald Acuna Jr., what happened with him getting plunked on the elbow. He was saying that Ron Gardenhire was saying that if it were up to him, he'd actually make Urena bat the next game and just basically tell the opposing team, hey, fire away.
Oh, hey.
Isn't that something?
If Pedro was in the National League during his heyday, I can guarantee you those pitches are not coming inside.
Yeah.
The way they were when he was pitching for Boston.
Yeah.
I mean, he was always erratic, and, he was younger in Montreal where you can kind of get away with that. Now, he's erratic, but if he was in the National League during his heyday, when he was throwing the ball, not on the inside part of the plate, but the area between the plate and the batter, he would have seen, he would have had a lot of welts from balls being thrown at him, and it's not a mystery there. And a lot of pitchers are like that in the American League. In the American League, they throw the ball inside because the pitcher does not have to go out there and get plunked. It's his teammate getting hit.
That's right.
And you've heard players complain about that, and you have to think there. You're out there in the field, okay, KP, you're playing second base, now you're playing first, you're starting off the next inning, and your pitcher nails their star.
Right.
You know what's coming.
Sure,
of course.
And he's your teammate, but that's not what you're thinking.
Yeah.
You're thinking, oh, man. And you're just getting ready for it. And a lot of guys will just go up there, they know it's coming, and they're going to take it. But the whole idea of throwing at players, and this isn't a new thing, this has been going on for a while. At what point do you just literally, it's like a deliberate headshot in hockey. You just say, that's it, bang, here's the book.
Yeah.
And you have to stop it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have to kind of think about, first of all, the intent. Like, a pitcher could say, well, the ball slipped. I mean, how do you prove intent?
If it's a hot day or your hand is sweating or whatever. Sure.
So that's
there's a lot out.
Sure.
There's a lot of them that have occurred where there's no doubt what the intent was.
Yeah.
You know what's going on. When Jose was getting thrown at by the Ranger pitchers, those weren't accidents. Fastballs you know what's going on because of what's happened before. In this case, the lovely flying in the home plate after his home runs, you kind of got an idea he was going to get hit. But still, the idea of throwing that thing at him, right? It's traveling really fast. It's really hard. You just can't have it. Brush him back.
Well, the pitcher's excuse is always going to be, well, I was trying to establish the inside, part of the plate, and the ball just happened to hit him. I mean, and I know, and everybody that's watching knows that that was intentional. But how can it be proven if the pitcher says, well, it was unintentional? You can't take his word for it. But it's just kind of difficult to establish intent. I mean, for the obvious scenarios, yes, but what about, for example, a rivalry between a guy like Jose Mesa and Omar Vizquel from years ago? Every time Vizquel came up to bat, Mesa would drill him, and that one would be intentional because Mesa goes out and actually says it to reporters after the game that that I would see that you could potentially suspend Mesa from the game or kick him out of the game permanently because he's come out and said every time Omar Vizquel steps up to bat, I'm going to drill him, I'm going to kill him. That would be obvious, but in other scenarios it's just kind of iffy. You just don't know.
Now, the other brawl that we were speaking about earlier, the one that Yasiel Puig got his 2-game suspension for, this is the other, that's starting to occur a lot more often, which is, the catcher starts jawing off of the player.
Right.
Right. I caught, and, you quietly say stuff and things like that, and you're supporting your pitcher. But, I mean, nowadays, it seems like, if you do something and you're hot dogging around, or in some cases, if you're stalling in the batter's box, Jason Varitek, Alex Rodriguez.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Or Brian McCann.
Yeah. Now the catchers are getting involved.
Yeah.
And Puig gets a suspension. How does Hundley not get a suspension? Because we know how this started. And that is another player jawing off at the guy who he knows has a short temper. This isn't anything new. And he gets nothing, and Puig gets 2.
You know what? You almost kind of wonder, is this kind of, boy, you almost, I hate to think it, but is this kind of racial or something? Like, it's not, that it really doesn't make any sense. I know Yasiel Puig, he's kind of, he's had his moments, but yeah, absolutely. Like, why isn't, the other party not getting nailed? Yeah, I mean, and let's face it, Dodgers and Giants, those are two teams that absolutely despise each other, not just on the field, but off the field. I mean, I've heard stories, of course, we know what happened to that one Giants fan at Dodger Stadium. And,
right.
I mean, those two teams' fan bases absolutely loathe each other, and I'd be very, if I were to go to a Dodgers-Giants game, wherever the home team is, I make sure I wear the home team colors just to be on the safe side. But it makes no sense, and I think you can say that more or less for like hockey, basketball, football, that sometimes the justice handed out just doesn't make sense. And this is another latest example.
You have this era of ball players now, and it's a lot of them that will turn around and jaw at the umpire, and now they're jawing at each other. At what point do you think maybe MLB, says, all right, we're going to go zero tolerance. If you turn around and question anything, if you communicate with another player outside of the, hey, how are the kids are doing, that's it. You're gone. I guarantee you they're going to stop jawing if they do that right away. Do you start going zero tolerance?
Well, I mean, the Players Association would never agree to that just because emotions run high, and during the course of competition, you can't control. Sometimes you can't control your emotions, and you say things you don't agree with. Let's say with the umpire, you don't agree with the call, and you're adamant that the umpire saw it the wrong way. You're going to say something because that's where your emotion takes over.
Yeah.
Or maybe a guy slides in too hard trying to break on a double play or something, or it's just the emotional part of it. I think you can't take that out of the game because we're talking about humans playing a sport, not robots. So I just don't see this zero tolerance.
Unless you have robot umpires.
Which they're talking about.
Like home plate or something. I don't know. But anyway.
Every other sport, if you jaw off at an umpire or a referee,
sure, unsportsmanlike conduct,
you can get a penalty. Sure, hockey is 2 minutes. Football, you get a flag. Basketball, you get a tee.
Yes.
Now, if you have an occurrence like this in basketball, you have suspensions for everybody involved because you can't step on the court, which I like, which I actually like. You don't want to see men that big throwing punches, wearing shorts and tank tops. But is it maybe time for Major League Baseball to look at some kind of penalty system, be it a strike, be it a ball if it's the other way?
Right.
Because they'll stop. You got 2 strikes. That ball comes across the plate. You're not happy with it. It's strike 2. And you might get a strike if you jaw. You're not opening your mouth.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I mean, maybe the purists might not like it, but I'm definitely okay with that because, you are right, Lou. There has to be some kind of crackdown, and if teams know that they're going to be penalized where it hurts the most, they're going to stop. They're going to tell their players, hey, we're here to win the game. We're not here to get involved with some other nonsense that's irrelevant to winning. So I can see ball strikes being called, for such infractions.
Well, they give a base for a balk, and now, of course, you can have a strike called on you if you don't get back into the batter's box. I don't think it's that far of a stretch, personally. So, maybe Major League Baseball does need to look at that. We're going to take a break from the majors and talk a little bit of Vancouver Canadians. When we come back, Rob Fay is going to join us. You're listening to Vancouver Canadians Game Day here on TSN 1040, powered by Booster Juice.
At Rona, we're here to take you from
no way, that sink is stylish.
to
No way, that sink is stylish.
this Thursday to Wednesday. Get 20% off selected bathroom products at Rona, where we're also here to take you from
Our bathroom.
to
Our bathroom.
this Thursday to Wednesday. Get 20% off in-stock baths, toilets, showers, shower columns, vanities, faucets, and medicine cabinets. Rona, here to help with your projects. Conditions apply.
Here's your host, Rob Fay.
Lou Filippo here, sitting in for Rob Fay, but it won't be for long because we have Rob on the line. We're not going to waste any time. Rob, last time we talked to you, the entire division was bunched up, and we asked you, is anyone going to be able to break away? Well, it looks like the Seas are kind of heading that way. What's changed?
Well, I tell you, they've just been a little more consistent. Good evening, guys. Great to hear from you. And today was a tough one because the Canadians, who had been so good over the last 2 weeks of the season, all of a sudden laid the proverbial egg and did it in front of 6,400 people at the Nat today. And, you know, you look back at that game, and it was really anything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. And I'm okay with that game actually happening in advance of the next 3 games because they take on really the only team in the division that can catch them, the Spokane Indians. So for me, eating a little humble pie today is probably a blessing in disguise. I mean, was it good for the fans that were there? Well, the hot dogs were hot, the drinks were cold, and the team stunk. But at least tomorrow, they'll have that humble pie that they've digested and hopefully come out and play them, the Spokane Indians, pretty tough.
Rob, this is KP here. On the road and the last couple of weeks, the Seas, played a bunch of tight games that went to extra innings. And, of course, they were fortunate enough to win a few of those. Now, having a loss like this to this afternoon, 6-0, is this like better than if they had lost like a close game or an extra innings, do you think, moving forward?
I don't necessarily look at the number of the score. I look at just the compete level. And today, the Canadians, for the first time in a long time, looked tired. For me, you got to remember, they had a 13-day, 10-game road trip. And for me, you would assume that it would be the first game out of that where the Canadians would look tired. But I think you can play a game or two on adrenaline. But you had a game last night followed by a game today. And again, same thing for Tri-City. They've gone through the same gauntlet that we have. But Tri-City doesn't face the pressure that the Canadians do right now. They're 6 games out. They're not going to make those up in a week and a half or 2 weeks. Whereas Vancouver right now is trying to fight off the cagey dog that is the Spokane Indians, who are a game and a half behind them right now. So they just looked mentally tired. They didn't look like they had their compete level. And like I said, blessing in disguise, it's good to get that one out now and then roll the dice with Spokane over the next 3 nights.
Well, Rob, Niall here. It's been a while since we talked, right?
Yes, like what, 4 hours?
4 hours ago, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you look at the way this season has gone for the Seas. It's really been, it's really hard to get a read on this team sometimes. They started off so slowly. People were writing them off. Then they won 5 in a row at one point, then kind of stumbled a little bit after that rough series in Boise. And now they're taking off again here in the second half. Probably won a couple of games that, really could have gone either way, winning 3 games in extra innings. But the Seas came back, 7-3. What are you expecting out of Spokane this time around? I think it's going to be very interesting to see what they're going to do, especially Hans Kraus, who was one of Spokane's top prospects. He was called up by Hickory, so that might be a bit of a break, but I think Spokane, I don't know. What are you expecting this series?
Well, it's one of the rare teams in the Northwest League that the Canadians haven't seen since essentially the first third of the season. So they're going to be 2 completely different teams. The thing that I like is the fact that Vancouver right now is pitching well. I look at the 3 starters who are going to be going against Spokane over the next 72 hours, and I'll take my chances with, for example, Jose Espada. You got Josh Winkowski, you got Randy Pondler. All 3 of those arms have been outstanding in multiple outings now for the Vancouver Canadians consecutively. So I'm going to give the edge to the Canadians on the pitching. There's no doubt that Curtis Terry, who's got 14 home runs for Spokane, is going to be a formidable foe. But Curtis Terry against the Vancouver Canadians, I think, is like 1 for 10 with 9 strikeouts. I mean, the reality is Vancouver matches up well against Spokane, knock on wood. But for me, this is a great opportunity to say, okay, how far has Vancouver come this season? Because when they played Spokane early on in the campaign, Vancouver was brutal. Let's not forget one key number. The Canadians were 4-9 this season after 13 games. That's 5 games below 500. They are now 5 games above 500. That's a 10-game swing over the last 40 games of the season, and that to me makes me real curious to know how far they've truly progressed against a team that they haven't seen against since what? I guess the beginning of July. That to me is really intriguing.
Rob, the Jays, obviously, their farm system is really starting to perk up. They released rankings again today, and no surprise who's number 1. Vladdy Jr., Bichette's there, Bijo's down the line. How long till we start hearing that name Otto Velez, because every week
Otto Lopez.
Velez.
Hey, you know what?
Blue Jay flashback.
You know what? It's Otto the Swatto.
Yeah,
of
Otto the
course, yeah.
Swatto. Blue Jay flashback. But every week, because these guys are young and they've been up here for a while, and he started off, hot as a rocket, but he's kept it going. Less strikeouts than walks. I mean, he's stealing bases. For a guy his size, he's got some pop, and he's just doing everything. And the big surprise here is, for a second baseman at this level, he only has 3 errors. Is this guy the real deal?
He reminds me a lot, and I know positionally they're a little bit different, but he kind of reminds you of a Josh Palacios from a couple of years ago. And Lou, you might remember because you've been with me a little bit longer. He reminds you a little of a Michael Richard, a guy that can do a little bit of everything. Obviously, he doesn't have a major league body. I mean, he's got 1% body fat. I'd trade anything to have his body for a week. But as far as like the prototypical major league body, it's not quite there yet. But you talk to Dallas McPherson, the manager of the Canadiens, you talk to anybody that has watched this guy play, opposing broadcasters, scorekeepers, and they love his tenacious efforts in the box. He takes, for example, prototypical leadoff guy. He probably sees on average 7 to 8 pitches per at-bat in his first at-bat of the game. But I sit here and I say to myself, how does this guy keep going 2 for 4, 3 for 5, steal your bases? And it just comes back to understanding how to hit in certain counts. And it's a lost art. A lot of guys, when they get to 2 strikes, they just succumb to, swinging at a bad pitch, trying to do something. Otto Lopez, I swear to God, it's almost as if he compartmentalizes what he does if it's 1-0 or 1-1 or 2-1 or 2-2. He's an unbelievable situational hitter. And for me, again, doesn't fit the prototype, but if you can hit, you can play. Just ask Kevin Pillar.
Absolutely, Rob. When I look at Lopez, when he swings the bat and balls seem to find holes or seems to elude the fielders. But what I want to talk to you about, Rob, is as far as on the Canadiens, is it more about development or about winning? Because, you look at last night, we have, Joey Murray, the starting pitcher, going 2 innings. Sean Weimer comes in for the next 3 innings. It's kind of been like a pattern with these 2 guys piggyback each other. I guess my question is is this something that the team is doing to try and develop these young pitchers, or is winning important at the same time as
I think winning players? I think winning, KT, is a part of development, but for me, it is definitely development first, winning second. And you got to remember, Joey Murray struck out 141 hitters at college this year, so he's seen plenty of action on the mound. And the Blue Jays, just the fact that they've got him in a uniform and are getting the chance to see him, he'll probably finish the season with about 25 to 30 innings, which, we look at that and we're like, dude, that's hardly anything. But again, to a guy that's already pitched a full collegiate season, that is really stretching it thin. So I love the fact that he goes just 2 innings. He had a pretty rough outing a couple of starts ago and was able to come back today and strike out 5 in his 2 innings of work. So I sit back and I say to myself, you know what? That to me is development. It's a shorter microcosm because you're looking at just 2 innings instead of 6 or 7. But I think that the Blue Jays have a great prospect there. For me, I mean, we're very fortunate in Vancouver to see how many times that we've not only competed but won championships. But I don't think there's anybody in the Toronto Blue Jays organization that if we even finished 5 or 10 games below 500 would care. They just want to make sure that their innings get met, that their at-bats get met, and that they can keep these guys healthy. So we've just been fortunate that we're able to actually field a competitive team. Because I look at a team like Tri-City that hasn't won a championship in 25 years. There's nobody within the Padres organization or the Rockies prior that we're losing any sleep. So that, to me, answers the question. Development first, winning is just icing on the cake.
Hey, Rob, one more question. I'm looking at how many players the Canadiens have used this season. If my math is correct, it looks like 40. And again, my math could be wrong, and I'm not going to try and attempt it on live radio here. But, last year they used 51 different players. So that would suggest, if you go by what's happened last year, and I'm not really sure what the numbers have been in previous years, but Do you think maybe there might be perhaps more roster shuffling? I mean, you look at Lansing right now, you look at Bluefield right now, they're about where the Canadians are. They are contending for a playoff spot. And of course, Lansing's already got a playoff berth locked up already. But do you think there's going to be more roster shuffling as we get down to the final final brass tacks of the season?
Yeah, I do. And it's funny. So long as the Canadians are where they are in the standings, we'll keep what we have, and we might inherit a player or two. But the second the Canadians hit the skids over the last 2 weeks of the season, hypothetically, if they do, it will be a mass exodus with players going up to Lansing because they are already in the postseason. So, again, for Vancouver right now, the recipe is simple. Keep yourself relevant going into the last 2 or 3 days of the season, and you will keep the roster that you have. But if they dare go into they've lost 5 of 6, and all of a sudden they're 2 or 3 games back, I would need my second hand to count players that would go. Conine would go, Murray would go, Weimer would go, Stadler would go. We would be left with shirtless Hans playing third base by the time the season ends. And don't put it against it, because really that's kind of how quickly things can change. So again, staying relevant is massively important to the Canadians maintaining. And if they can, they'll get some players from Bluefield, and then it is the sky's the limit.
Thanks for the visual there, Rob, by the way.
Well, earned it. Shirtless Hans. By the way, before you guys let me go, I was listening to segment 1 about what you would do to penalize those who hit batters.
Yep.
And the only thing that I can say is the 6-game suspension is comical. You should suspend him for 15, and you should suspend his manager for 15 as well.
Absolutely.
And you should fine his manager, because I can tell you this, if a Vancouver Canadian player gets thrown out of the game, so too goes Dallas McPherson, and there's also a financial penalty that comes with it. So for me, cool. He's gone for 6 games. Mattingly should be gone for 12, and there should be a $50,000 to $100,000 on that as well. Now all of a sudden you'll see guys that are taking second guesses because they're not the only one that goes down with the ship.
No, good call there. Good call there. Once again, enjoy your well-earned night off, and you're back behind the mic tomorrow night when Spokane comes in. 3-game homestand against Spokane, then off on the road where they get their shot at revenge against Tri-City. Thanks again, Rob, for joining us. You are listening to Vancouver Canadians Game Day, powered by Booster Juice on the home of the Seas, TSN 1040.
It's the third and final jewel in the OLG Canadian Triple Crown as the focus shifts back to Woodbine for a 1.5-mile marathon on the turf.
3 of them go to the wire. It's a head bob. Channelmaker.
The Breeders' Stakes. Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific on TSN.
Up the middle. Here comes another run for the Seas. Here's your host, Rob Fay.
Welcome back to Vancouver Canes Game Day, powered by Booster Juice. Rob Fay has the night off after a disappointing 6-0 loss to the Tri-City Dust Devils. Dust Devils. Always got to get that one right. Traveling with the Dust Devils, member of their organization, former Major League Baseball player Tony Tarasco, whose claim to fame is probably, of course, he was underneath that ball that Jeffrey Meyer caught, giving Derek Jeter a home run during the ALCS, and vaulted the Yankees to the World Series, and the Orioles just collapsed after that. But he didn't freak out like players did today. Classy individual at that time, which is probably why he is still in the game. Played for 6 major league teams, as well as the Hanshin Tigers of the Japanese League. And Rob had a chance to catch up with him yesterday and talk about baseball and, well, lots of other things.
Tony Tarasco is in Vancouver for the first time ever. Tony, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, the whole city's welcoming you.
Well,
you're here with the Padres. You're with the bad guys today.
Well, yes, I am with the bad guys, but I am a former Canadian baseball player.
That's true. The Expo, they love you back east.
Hopefully my card still works on this side of town.
I hope so. You are obviously here as a part of the Padres organization, and you've got a Tri-City team right now that's in tough. They're taking on a team that's got some pretty good success over the last couple of years, but last night, your broadcaster told me, they just took our 2 best arms out of the bullpen. And then you bring out Jordan Guerrero, who throws 102 miles an hour. If this is plan B, you guys are doing your job.
Yeah, that was some pretty phenomenal stuff last night, especially by the starter did a great job holding him at bay the whole game. And Guzman came in. He held him, and then Guerrero came in. And all special stuff. It's lightning, man. It comes out of their hands. It comes out with life. It moves around a lot. And all three of the guys go to the mound with a lot of courage. They don't pitch scared at all.
Yeah, and it showed because we lost, and we hadn't lost much in the last week. I'm going to take you chronologically backwards for a bit. I want to go to New York.
All right.
The mean streets of New York for you. Now, you got to remember, you have a connection to a guy that I know pretty well in Andy Dunn, and he's locked and loaded me. He wants me to talk about Jeffrey Mary. He wants me to talk about New York. Coming up as a kid, obviously a couple of different sporting options for you. What was it about baseball in that time that made you say, you know what, that's the sport?
Well, my father was the main push. My dad he worked at Yankee Stadium. He was a hot dog vendor when he was there. And I spent the majority of my young youth in New York. I eventually moved out to Los Angeles. But I actually despise all West Coast teams, except for the Padres now. But I grew up a big Yankee fan. I'm a big Knickerbocker fan. I love the New York Giants. So I always played with more of an East Coast mentality on the West Coast. The West Coast players they get to play year round, so they don't appear as excited as East Coast players who've been locked away all winter and finally getting outside for the summertime, right? So I played with a little bit of that mentality when I grew up.
Music, East Coast, West Coast.
Oh, man, everywhere. I'm a world guy. I've always been a world guy.
You can't rep the East when it comes to sports and all of a sudden be down the middle.
If you want to go back to the 90s, that's so difficult. I love poems and I love poetry, and I definitely like lyricists, and it's hard to compare Tupac and Biggie Smalls, and it's hard to compare Jay-Z and Ice Cube. Like, they're just coming from different places, but I always thought that I was always intrigued by both sides of it.
I was at a concert a couple of months ago, and then all of a sudden, and he was the pre-card guy. He wasn't even the main event. Vanilla Ice was the main event, by the way. The pre-card was Rob Bass, and I was losing my mind. I'm like, oh my God, this is like a dude. And everybody's like, Rob Bass, it takes two. It's like 20 years. I go, but still, this is like one of the pillars of early hip hop.
Yeah, if you still play that song, you get people on the dance floor
100%.
Quite a bit. Yeah, right? I think I learned most of my dance moves from that song, that era of dance moves.
I know. It was a good era.
It was a good era. Hip hop was in a bit of a renaissance, right? So you had a spectrum, all the way from tough and rugged to, more of a message. So the variety was incredible. How can you choose one side?
Well, see, I want to talk to you about this a little bit because you've played in some cities that have always had a little bit of a niche. I mean, not just Montreal, but let's go south to the dirty South. I mean, was that something in your off time that you guys would do? Would you look for clubs that were playing that kind of music? Because you were rocking around some pretty good cities at some pretty good times for music.
All right, that's a great question, okay? So I consider myself the Forrest Gump of the hip-hop world. All right, and
in the right place at the right time,
right? So I came up with the Atlanta Braves when I was drafted, and my first 2 years were 93, 94 with the Atlanta Braves in the big leagues. That was also at the time that Atlanta was making its way, not only hip-hop, but R&B. So they had released Outkast at the time. TLC was coming from there at the time. Usher
Young
was
Ludacris
coming. Usher was Ludacris, right? You had Goody Mob.
Wow,
you had Dallas. You had Dallas was out there producing. Jermaine Dupri was out there producing. So you had Criss Cross and the Brat. So I was in Atlanta during that renaissance, and to watch it grow and watch that city bloom and have its own flavor. I mean, that's when the Dirty South started.
That's like the epicenter.
Yes.
When it came through, and I know St. Louis had it, but it was essentially out of Atlanta. So you're a baseball player during that Renaissance period, quote unquote Renaissance period. Are you rubbing shoulders with these guys because you got the ticket?
I was a little different off the field than most baseball players were on the field.
How so?
Most baseball players went to the bar with their necklace out and their number on their necklace. I put a beanie on and used to go right to underground hip-hop places.
Really?
Because that was also the era of freestyling battles. So you could go to random hip-hop places on a night, and you would catch Andre from Outkast battling somebody else from another neighborhood in a local club. And that's what I loved about it. I always loved going to underground places. I actually liked leaving my baseball uniform in the locker and embracing myself.
I bumped into Andre 3000 at a Shoppers Drug Mart, which which is a place where you buy your aspirin, and he was waiting in line so that he could buy a recording device because he forgot his at the airport or somewhere on a jet or something like that. So I went back to my radio station and got it for him, and he says, "I get it back to you, man. I've never seen it again, but it's okay." That's my claim to fame.
Yeah, but I enjoyed it. I actually, you asked me about friends. I actually became pretty good friends with the girls from TLC. I slightly dated T-Boz for a little bit, for a few months, and then I actually grew really close with Chili and with Left Eye. And I spent quite a bit of time with Left Eye. She would come over on many occasions.
Was she with Andre at that time?
She was with Andre at that time, and he was also very much engulfed in that hip hop world. He was really, really, really loved and was trying to do his own album. So you find it was growing big outside in the world, but it was still a tight knit community in Atlanta.
Dude, I don't even want to talk baseball because the music thing really appeals to me, because TLC really became kind of the poster child for safe sex and for empowering women, especially urban women. Did they realize what they had? Did you get to see it from that point? I mean, if you're hanging out with T-Boz and Left Eye, you got to see some pretty unique moments.
Yeah, I met them at the very beginning stages of the career, so I think they were embracing their talent. It was nice to see that they were getting such good feedback from the dancing, from the singing, from the style of songs that we're doing. But those girls always had good head on their shoulders, right? And despite, an incident here or two with Left Eye, she was actually incredibly bright herself, and she was an incredible humanitarian. We all, rest in peace. We all know she passed away while she was down in Honduras doing some charity work. She was always like that. And you find that in your most talented people, they usually have that rooted at the bottom. They're just like reaching people and like having a direct effect on people.
If I was to put you in a time machine and I want you to take me to one place where you looked around and said, "How the heck did I get here?" Where's that place we're going to? It doesn't even have to be a city. It could be a situation.
You're asking me a big scenario. Okay, you know what? I will take you back to 1993, at the end of 93, close to 94. I was at Jermaine Dupri's house. I was in the recording booth with Brat. Brat and I were good friends, and she was recording Functified.
Get lost. And on the other side of the glass, you have DeBrat, and she's laying down Functified.
I can't tell you which one, but I'm on a couple interludes on that album.
Get lost. Is that a true story?
Well, yes, it is. My nickname is Baby Jack, and if you go to that Functified album and you look on the back, she gives a special thanks out.
She shouts you out.
She gives me a shout out.
She's one of the most underrated of that entire era.
Yeah, she was. At that time, she had a lot of following, though.
But you know how history looks
looking back
right?
on it. You don't realize how much she impacted. You don't realize how much Jermaine impacted the game of hip hop.
He's still got his fingers in it though, a little bit though, right?
He doesn't stop doing it. I remember being, that same day we were at his studio in his house. Crisscross. They were sitting on the couch. And people were coming in and out throughout the course of the evening, and just different artists. Anybody from Goody Mob to TLC would have been there that night, and they were all collaborating on the same albums. That was the beautiful thing about hip hop in that era. It wasn't just albums. You were meshing a lot of R&B. It was the era of the remix, right? So you'd put a song out, but people would wait for the remix single to come out. You'd always buy the single because the remix always had special guests on it.
Well, Welcome to Atlanta.
Yes.
The remix was maybe even better than the original.
Slam it. I listened to that
because it went to like 4 or 5 different cities, and then all of a sudden
Snoop Dogg, right? Nelly, Puffy. You had quite a few people.
That was pretty good. Yeah, I remember that. As far as remixes go, that was pretty good. Tony, before I let you go, I am going to bring it back full circle to baseball because I want to talk a little bit about the Padre way, because we've been very privy to the Blue Jay way, and they're on their way to a rebuild right now. I don't know how long their manager, John Gibbons, is going to be at the helm. They've got some good prospects like Vladdy Jr. There's a few kids that are on the way, but there's this bridge. San Diego, as I look over the last couple of years, has kind of been going through that as well. I mean, you've been able to go out and sign some talented guys that can kind of, be put on the posters and what have you. But from a Padres perspective, where are you guys at right now, and what advice could you give to a fan of the Blue Jays that's about to embark on a couple of tough years?
Well, one slow brick at a time. That's the advice I would give to a Blue Jays fan, especially if you wanted to sustain over a long period, right? We don't like just having teams win championships. We like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pennants in a row, right? Where you just know your team is good nonstop.
Like Atlanta in the 90s.
Like Atlanta was in the 90s, right? So, and for us, we're at that stage, I would consider this where we're at the last turn. We're coming into that last turn of a thoroughbred race. And this is when the real horses start separating themselves from the rest of the pack, right? And this is when you start buckling down and the jockey gets in tighter and he starts holding firmer. And that's we're in the same stage too. So the scouting department has done a fantastic job going out and signing talent. Not just a few guys. Our quote is hot talent lava bed. So that's actually what's on my T-shirt. That's actually what's on my T-shirt right here.
What it was.
Right, and so they went out. Chris Kemp, who's the director of our international scouting, he went out and he signed a huge group of really talented players from the Dominican, and Pete DeYoung and the rest of the American staff. They went out and signed a bunch of good athletes, right? And so AJ Preller has always been on the athletic side of the game. He wants excitement. He wants fast. He wants guys to play natural, right? And most of all, he wants guys to have fun because that's the most entertaining baseball. So we got him. We started molding them, right? And Sam Gainey always gave us the direction on molding our players, like just laying that initial foundation, right? So most of the guys we're getting are young. So we're not only in the process of growing big league baseball players, we're also in the process of growing big league men. And that is one thing, if there's an advice to the Toronto Blue Jays organization, is you have to dive in deeper. You have to invest more money. There's one thing about the Padres that I've seen that they've done very well. We have a motto: nobody knows our players better than us. And we go deep, not just knowing how many brothers and sisters you have. I want to know who peed their pants in Little League. And I want to know who is prom king and how much of us. And we go deep in our relationships with them. We really try to build those relationships. Then that trust happens. And then when we move them out onto the field, they believe in us. And we point them in the right direction, and they just pull the cord.
One of the most enjoyable interviews I've done in a long time, Tony. I appreciate you stopping by.
Talking to you.
You're welcome anytime.
Anytime you want me to come in here and talk to hip-hop, we can go in and
There's
talk
not
to
many
hip-hop.
guys in
All right, so
Vancouver.
let me fire a question back at you. You got 5 seconds to rattle them off. Your top 5 MCs of all time.
I'm going to go, I'm going to go Easy Rock. I'm going to go, from my generation, I'm going to go Jay-Z. There's a guy you don't know named Maestro Fresh West, who was the godfather of hip-hop in Toronto.
I know
if he made his way
I know it is. I met him.
Do you actually?
Yeah, I met him back in the day.
I loved early Luda. I don't like Chris, but I like Luda.
Early.
And if I had to round it out, I got to go Eminem, man. Pound for pound is all right.
We're on 2 of them. Definitely Jay-Z, definitely Eminem. I was a big Corrupt fan from the West Coast.
Yeah,
Corrupt was pretty nasty. Ice Cube, LL Cool J. I mean, we could go down that line because you're slipping on LL was one of the baddest MCs.
Underrated. He's
not underrated. He's the GOAT. I mean,
the problem is this generation looks at him as a host of a TV show. They don't realize he's the guy that rocked tangos back in the day.
Everybody knows Rock the Bells, and I Need a Beat led the way, right?
If we found a 16-year-old right now and asked them what they knew LL for, they would say probably for a game show.
We're in that stage now where that starts to circle back, and they start falling in love with stuff like that. And I think the most underrated rapper of all time was KRS-One.
See, you could say KRS, I go E40.
E40 was dope too. And see, we could sit here. We had a nice bottle of wine and some cheese. We could sit here all night.
I'm around. You know where to find me whenever you come back to Vancouver.
I'm definitely
Tony Tarasco, you're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
That was awesome. I would love to sit down, bottle of wine, have some cheese, listen to some KRS-One, Boogie Down Productions, with Tony Tarasco. Rob Fay, ditching ERA, ditching whip, talking RPMs with Tony Tarasco, former Major League ball player. Oh, that was a great run there. We're going to come back after the break, and we're going to get back to some Major League Baseball just down 99 and the I-5 down the Safeco Field where the Seattle Mariners call home. And what is going on with them? We thought they were dead, and you know what? They seem to have risen from the ashes and maybe have something left. You are listening to Vancouver Canadians Game Day, powered by Booster Juice on the home of the Canadians, TSN 1040.
Hi,
Hi, Stuart Zuckerman here of Zuckerman Law Group. Here's a real review of our law firm that I'm really proud of.
Stuart and his team helped my family through a very difficult case. He was very well prepared and brilliant in his presentation to the judge. Based on the judge's comments, it was clear Stuart was far more persuasive and we won our application. Stuart's fees were even less than my ex's, worth every penny.
ZuckermanLaw.ca in Surrey and Yaletown. Call us before your spouse.
Vancouver Canadians Game Day, your weekly wrap-up from around the major leagues. Now, here to knock it out of the park, deep to left, that one's not coming back, Rob Fay.
Welcome back to Vancouver Canadians Game Day, powered by Booster Juice. Rob Fay has the night off. Lou Filippo here with you with KP Wee and Niall O'Donohoe. First time I've gotten it right.
There you go.
The whole way
All
through.
right.
A quick shout out to Rebecca Marino, doing well there at the Odlum Brown Open. She, for a couple of years, actually worked for the Canadians when I was there as well. Awesome person. Super person. Really happy for her that she is back playing competitive tennis. Another team that is back being competitive is a team that we didn't understand what they were doing. Basically gave them a playoff spot and then watched them further away, and now they've kind of squeezed their way back into it. And of course, we are talking about the Seattle Mariners, and we're talking about a team that's kind of hung in there all year long. They're going to get Robinson Cano back soon, but Felix has gone to the bullpen. James Paxton is on the DL. What gives here, Niall, with this team? They should be a TV show on their own.
Yeah, it's, you get ready to count them out. We saw them lose 3 out of 4 to the Toronto Blue Jays at Safeco Field, and
that's not easy to do.
No, it isn't. And, I mean, really, I think for the Mariners, really, again, as has been the case over the last few years, those really are de facto Blue Jays home games when it's a Blue Jays invasion, just descending upon Safeco Field. But still, I mean, the Blue Jays were certainly ripe for the picking. I mean, they get a guy, Mike Hauschild, who basically signed half an hour before a game and goes on to pitch, 6 shutout innings, taking over for Tyler Clippard. And, Blue Jays winning 3 out of 4 and nearly could have won 4 out of 4, really. But then just when you're ready, you're right off the Mariners. They go into Houston and win all 4 games in Houston. Very first time they pulled off the sweep, a 4-game sweep in Houston. And boy, it came at a great time for them. And then against Oakland, they fell behind early, made it close a couple of times. And then finally in 12 innings, D. Gordon hitting a big 2-run home run. So a 5-2 road trip. And you also got to wonder what's going on with the Houston Astros. You would think that with that rotation that they have, that they should be definitely running away with this thing, but they're not. And I guess we kind of saw a little bit of what was going on against the Mariners in that series. They don't really seem to have that bona fide knockout closer. I mean, they've had Rondon, they've had Roberto Osuna as he took the loss in that series finale, a game that the Mariners were able to rally and pull out in extra innings. So, I mean, the Mariners have just, you just can't figure out why they're doing what they're doing, but they keep on doing, and they still have a shot at making the playoffs. And I think you never know. It could very well be Oakland maybe winning the West, and maybe it's Houston, Seattle fighting out for the wild card.
Now, wouldn't that be something? Now, KP, their run differential is a -22, which puts them behind the Tampa Bay Rays. It puts them 60 runs behind the Angels. So this is not what you would say a top to bottom strong team. And all year long, it's like, eventually it's going to happen. And it finally did. But now they're bouncing back a bit. What needs to go right for them to hang on? Or do you just really see this now with Paxton on the DL and you've got, Hernandez in the pen? Do you just see this falling off the cliff for them?
Well, to answer your first question, Lou, what needs to happen, right, would be, getting back to winning those one-run games, winning those close games that they did early in the season. That's what got them to a great start. They need to do that. But I don't really see this happening because, we were just talking about this during the break. They have 9 games coming up against the Dodgers, the Astros, and the Diamondbacks, 3 teams who are contending for postseason postseason spots, 3 basically first place teams, if you will. Yes, I know Seattle has had Houston's number for whatever reason this year, winning 7 out of the 13 games so far. But the next 9 games will be tough. And with Paxton on the DL and with Hernandez kind of struggling, if you are realistic, you just don't see them kind of continuing to do well. And they still have 7 more games against Oakland the rest of the season, 4 more games against the Angels, and I want to get back to something Now said earlier regarding the Astros. I am surprised too that to the Astros. Well, I think most of us are surprised that the Astros aren't running away with it. But think about it, you have to have a good bullpen to be able to do well. In terms of getting to the postseason, we saw what happened with the Atlanta Braves in the '90s. Great rotation, but other than Mark Wohlers that 1 year, couldn't get it done. That's why they had just 1 championship. So hopefully, we're not seeing the same scenario with Houston, but they might have the best rotation, but they need guys to close games out.
I don't know if, keeping runs off the board is their biggest problem. They've given up 60 less runs than the next best team in the American League, which is the Boston Red Sox, which we'll get to later. But we're talking about Robinson Cano is going to be back soon.
He is back. He just returned for the Oakland series. Yes.
Okay, there we go. That's soon.
Yes, that is soon. Actually, it's funny because he was actually in Everett helping out the Aqua Sox. Right. He was in Tacoma before that, but I guess when Tacoma went on the road, they wanted to keep Cano nearby. So basically, the Aqua Sox got a ringer in Cano, and he helped him win a couple of games. I think he homered a couple of times in those games, and I think the Aqua Sox had their biggest crowds of the season. So not surprising there, getting a chance to really see Robinson Cano up close.
Not hard park to homer in, though, by the way.
No, it isn't. It's a real bandbox.
So now you're the Mariners. What do you do with Cano? Do you just kind of throw him in there? Do you DH him? Do you throw D. Gordon back in the outfield? He's been pretty good there at second base.
Yeah.
Now you're in a quandary.
Yeah, it's something that they're going to have to play by ear. I know they've had Guillermo Heredia patrolling center field, and D. Gordon looked pretty good for a guy who hadn't really played center field really before in the pros, and but I think it'd be ideal. That I know Cano's seen time at first base, and that's where he started right now. But Cano's got such a tremendous glove. But D. Gordon, he's no slouch either. It's a tough call. But you go from fielding to I think the closer Edwin Diaz. He has been money in the bank. I mean, he saved all 4 games in that Houston series. I mean, that's practically really unheard of, really, for a team to use their closer in 4 games in a row. But again, they were must win. And apparently, I guess the story was Diaz told Scott Service or called down and said, look, I'm available after the Mariners took the lead in that last game, that Sunday afternoon game when Ryan Healy hit that game-tying home run. So, and he's on pace again, maybe to set the Major League saves record. Frankie Rodriguez holding the record with 62, and I think Diaz is on pace or maybe just a little bit behind. So I think he's pretty much been their MVP, and I think he's going to deserve some MVP consideration, even though, yes, I know he's only a 1-inning pitcher.
Sometimes, if you can shorten that game up, we've always talked about these good teams. What they do is they shorten games. You have a couple of middle guys going there, then you can keep the guy as a 1-inning pitcher. As the season goes off, they're still in there. Do they resist the urge to bring him in a bit early and put out of the fire a little bit earlier? We'll have to see. But talking about the pitching, so you're going into these very, very important series. And if I told you, say 2 months ago, that Seattle Mariners are going to be going down the stretch, important series, no Paxton, no Hernandez, what would you say? Who's going to pick up the slack here, KP?
Well, they have Mike Leake, the veteran, who used to pitch for the Reds. But, if you told me that 2 months ago, I would have thought, wow, they're pretty much done. But, the thing that now alluded to earlier with Diaz is when you know that you have a stopper in the late innings to kind of, shut the door, you could just basically have, you could be doing what Tampa Bay was doing. It just having different guys try and give you 3 innings here, a couple innings there, and get to the bullpen. Now, are you going to overwork Diaz? Perhaps, but again, he's on pace to actually break or at least tie K-Rod's saves record for a single season, and it's not even close in terms of the numbers because I believe for Rodriguez, when he set that record with the Angels, he had like a very high ERA, or close to 3. But for Diaz, lights out. But if you have a guy like that at the end of, or in your bullpen, just have your stars throw innings. Doesn't matter if it's league, doesn't matter if it's some guy you call up from AAA, some guy that you acquire, in August, via the waiver trade that will prior to the August 31st trade deadline, I should say. You just got to do whatever you got to do. If you're that close, management has to go out and pick up guys, to fill the void, because you're talking about 2 horses. Well, one of them anyway, with Felix Hernandez's track record. For me, Paxton has had a good year this year, yes, but for me, he's always been a guy like, I would kind of compare him to a guy like Brandon Morrow with the Blue Jays. Huge potential. You thought he was going to be a star, but injuries, that's been his track record. So if I were the Mariners and a Mariners fan, which I'm not, I would say get the GM, pick up the phone, bring some guys in, and let those guys throw some innings.
Well, do they really have anything to give to bring guys in? And it's pretty thin pickings there. And let's not forget, the team that's chasing them, they are now chasing Oakland, has been the best team in that division in the second half. And it's not close.
Oakland has just been unbelievable. You have Chris Davis just hitting up a storm. The Chris Davis who can hit. Yes,
who can hit.
KHRIS, Chris Davis, not the Baltimore.
Which is ironic, because the other one should have the K in his name.
Yes, yes, he does go down swinging quite a bit. I'm just looking at what's ahead for the Mariners. KP mentioning the schedule earlier. Of course, the LA Dodgers are at Safeco Field for the weekend. You look at the rotation matchups on paper. Walker Buehler against Wade LeBlanc. That could go either way. Rich Hill, Erasmo Ramirez, if you go by name recognition alone, Rich Hill. And Clayton Kershaw is listed as a probable starter on Sunday against Marco Gonzalez. Gonzalez has been one of their better pitchers this year, but he's kind of fallen on tough times a little bit lately. So, the Mariners are going to be in tough. You have Felix Hernandez. It looks like he'll be taking over for James Paxton, and who knows how long Paxton is going to be out for. Yes, it's a 10-day disabled list, but let's face it, you take a shot off the forearm, it's going to be a while. It's not like, I guess it's not quite the same as what happened to Nate Pearson, the Blue Jays prospect, when he took a line shot off the arm, and that did more damage, but still, you could be looking maybe at a month by the time Paxton gets back.
This is interesting. I realize this was a pretty good shot he took off the arm here, so this might not be valid here, but he's had a lot of, a skipped start here, a little 10-day trip to the DL. And he is getting a reputation for being injury prone. But do you think maybe, and this is really odd to say about a guy who's almost 30 years old, do you think maybe the Mariners are babying him a bit?
As far as this season, I wouldn't say so, but if I remember correctly, a few years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, they started him in AAA, had him pitch there, but that was only because he did horribly in spring training. But I wouldn't say that they have been babying Paxton, but I guess he's had bad luck. Injuries just happen. I not following the team that much. I wouldn't say that they had been babying him, because this season he's basically gone he's gone at least 7 innings in 10 of his starts. So that's he's been out there.
I'm not talking about babying him in the game.
Sure.
But it just seems like every time he gets a little nick, misses a start.
Well, you know what? When teams are spending millions upon millions of dollars, and teams are still trying to figure out how to keep pitchers healthy, and it's that's going to be the next analytical breakthrough for whichever team finds the winning formula.
I think it's a trend for teams across the big leagues. I wouldn't just say it's for just one specific pitcher, but I agree with you. Now it's like that's what teams are doing these days to protect their investments, because these arms are all investments to each ball club.
No, I totally understand that. But I remember years ago this discussion came up because you're seeing now our pitchers are not throwing a lot of innings. They're throwing less innings. They're getting less starts. And when you have these guys who throw a lot of complete games, it's like, oh, heck, where the heck did he come from? Well, years ago, that's what they all did.
That's right.
They didn't get hurt. They pitched. Nolan Ryan, first stint to the DL, was his last stint to the DL.
Yeah.
And he threw a ton of pitches,
Yeah.
And speaking about of a ton of pitches, when we come back from this break, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of major league players who have thrown a whole bunch of pitches and they really shouldn't be. And no, we are not talking about the Jays rotation. We're talking about position players taking the mound. Is it a trend? Should it be a trend? Well, it's definitely trending, including today. We'll be right back. You're listening to Vancouver Canadians Game Day here on the home of the Canadians, TSN 1040.
Here's your host, Rob Fay.
Welcome back to Vancouver Canes Game Day, powered by Booster Juice. Lou Filippo with you here, sitting in for Rob. Niall O'Donoghue joining us, and KP Wee as always. Taking a look at the Major League scoreboard quickly. Jays and KC still delayed 0. How long do you think they're going to do that before they call that? I mean, let's face it.
It's the fourth game of the series, and
it means nothing.
It means
nothing.
Either they totally scrub the game, which I don't think they would do at this point, or they have to find a common off day, I would think. I don't know.
Angels leading Texas 6-4. The Phillies leading the Mets 9-4. And that's actually the second game of a doubleheader. First game went really, really well for the Phillies. The Mets with a 24-4 win. That's a 2-4 to a 4-pack, a nice size for beer nowadays. And that's not notable just for what the score was, but the Phillies today used 2 position players to pitch. They used Roman Quinn for inning and a bit, and then Scott Kingery to close things out. And they turned a 15-4 deficit into a 24-4 deficit. From 1992 to 2006, non-pitchers made 58 appearances. After this tonight, this year, non-pitchers have made 56 appearances. Now, it's not all bad news. Record's 1-45.
Not all bad news.
Not all bad news.
Got the one win, yes.
Got the one win. Cubs and Brewers have done it the most times, 6 times. ERA 9.59, 306 batting average, a 1.051 OPS.
Wow.
I think there's a spot in the Jays rotation for this guy. What is going on? Now, a couple of things I've seen, is one, there's a lot more games getting out of hand. So why waste a pitcher? And you've seen a lot of that this year. I don't know if I like it or not, Niall. You bring in a player to pitch. It used to be a novelty, but now it's...
Yeah, it's becoming a little bit more common, and it all goes back to why waste a pitcher here? Find the 25th man on the roster and send him out there. I remember what Ryan Goins pitching couple of innings against Cleveland. I think it was on Canada Day. Was it 2 years ago? I believe it was, and he wound up being injured. That's certainly one setback. And Ryan Goins, say what you will about his bat and all that, but very solid defender. I'm not really sure what he's up to these days. I know he was in the Royals system. I'm not really sure where Ryan Goins is. He went somewhere else. But anyway, that's the risk you run. I mean, Jose Canseco.
Yep. That's most famous example.
Right. Well, yeah, it used to be thanks for the numbers, Lou, there. But it used to be when these position players came into a ball game, it was a novelty thing. I remember as a child watching Chili Davis come in to pitch for the Angels, and he actually pitched against Jose Canseco. Believe it or not, Canseco was laughing in the batter's box. It was kind of a fun thing because the game was out of hand. You have a position player come in to pitch 1 inning. But what happened today with the Mets and the Phillies? That's just it sounds kind of ridiculous. And there was actually a game earlier this year in July. It was Arizona at Coors Field against the Rockies, and Arizona was down by a bunch of runs, and they brought in a utility play in the 4th inning. And they ended up having 2 position players pitch the final 4 and 2/3 innings. So basically from the 4th to the end of the game. That's just kind of ridiculous, but I do understand why, because yes, they want to keep the bullpen fresh because you have 162 games over the course of the season, and something that we kind of talked about weeks ago with, let's say, the Blue Jays. We couldn't have a lot of their stars give quality starts, and when that happens, you have your starters not getting the job done, the bullpen gets taxed, you're going to have to give them a day off, so to speak.
That's a really good point, because I was going to go in this direction as well. It's not only that these games are blowouts, but the way that teams use pitchers now. Back in the day, your middle reliever would come in, think Royley Jackson or something like that, and give you 3 innings. So you weren't pitching guys back-to-back days or 3 times in 4 days. So you might look at that game and you're looking at it and it's like, okay, Suarez lasted 4 innings. There's only, you only have to fill in 5 innings, but then, Leiter Jr. gives up 7, all unearned. And now you've still got 5 innings and you're down 15-4. And yeah, you don't want to waste a pitcher. But is that because we're not letting relievers throw more than an inning here? We're not letting starters throw more than 5. So you don't have arms. They used 5 pitchers today. If you were using actual pitchers on the staff, that's probably 6 or 7.
Well, and maybe this leads to the, why not have perhaps more pitchers? I mean, you look at with the Vancouver Canadians, say, for example. Actually, before I get to that, Ryan Goins' update. He is in the Philadelphia Phillies system. He is now a member of the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs.
One of my favorite names.
Yes, actually, the former Ottawa Lynx. So anyway, that's a little bit of a tidbit for you. But anyway, as I was getting to, I know there was a point to what I was trying to say here. Yes, getting back to the bullpen and Vancouver Canadians, they have, kind of an expanded roster. I believe is 35-man roster. You can dress 30, if I'm not mistaken. So you do have extra pitchers. But it's funny that last year, during the Seas Championship year, they had their one rough stretch where they were beaten up by the Houston. I was going to say the Houston Hops, the Hillsborough Hops. It could have been the Houston Hops.
Would have been
Houston Astros. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Hillsborough, basically just came into Vancouver and stole the Canadians' lunch money. And one game got really out of hand. They needed a catcher, Matt Morgan, to pitch an inning. So I think the answer is maybe you have to expand the rosters. I mean, let's have qualified pitchers who should be there. I mean, what was it earlier this year? Yeah, Kendrys Morales, who was actually doing better as a pitcher at one point than as a hitter. So, I mean, I don't know. I think that's got to be the answer, because if teams are so concerned about, not blowing out pitchers' arms, maybe they just need more pitchers. I mean, I know the Blue Jays, I know there's a lot of criticism before, all this wave of injuries. They're always using 8-man and 9-man bullpens, but maybe that's the answer. Maybe just expand the roster a little bit more. I mean, it's not as big a deal in September when you expand to 40-man, but maybe 30. I'm not sure.
KP, back when they weren't using position players, it was kind of considered, pseudo insulting to bring one of these guys in just because it's basically a BP session. But now that's becoming so frequent, it really is happening a lot. Do you really think, if you're a batter and you see them haul in the second baseman that pitched you, are you not sitting there for a second thinking, what are these guys doing? And get a little bit offended?
Well, I think it's the game is different now compared to decades ago where players on opposing teams hated each other, but I think now there's more of a camaraderie amongst major league players. Yes, there's some guys who don't like each other, but for the most part, guys are chatting with each other all the time. And maybe someone comes up, position player, second baseman comes in the pitch. Maybe I'm standing at the plate laughing as I was coming. I'm gonna get you this time. It kind of becomes kind of like I guess a personal rivalry where it's kind of like, I'm going to get you, haha, you're going to get me. I would think the players would take it more like as like a joke, or kind of like not be offended. If it were talking about 30 years ago, I could see it that way, but just with the way that guys like to hang out with each other after the games and, before the games and all that, I don't see, hitters being offended. They just probably think it's kind of cool or kind of neat, and they just don't want to look foolish striking out against a position player.
I'm just not a fan of it. I remember my worst memory of a position player pitching was actually with the Canadians. A Sunday game, afternoon game, nooner, when it's still Oakland system. Game goes to the 15th inning. It's all tied up, and Rick Mignonte, who I have a ton of respect for, hauls out the catcher. And you guys know, you work the games. You know what it's like when you're working a game. And you've invested those 5 hours getting baked in the sun.
Yes.
And they haul out the catcher instead of going to the bullpen. We're not going to the bullpen here. We're going to be right back, though, with our last segment. We're just going to talk about a whole bunch of different baseball things. Rapid fire here on Vancouver Canadians Game Day on the home of the Seas, TSN 1040.
Vancouver Canadians Game Day, powered by Booster Juice. Drilled up the middle. Here comes another run for the Seas. Oh, baby. Here's your host, Rob Fay.
Welcome back to the last segment of Vancouver Canadians Game Day, powered by Booster Juice. Rock Bay taking the night off after watching the Seas fall 6-0 this afternoon to the Tri-City Dust Devils. If you think that makes you mad, we've been talking off air here for a bit, and we are going to talk about things that really, really bother us.
What grinds our gears?
What grinds our gears?
Right.
We're going to start off with I like this, but somebody here does not. It's called the Players Weekend, where the players get to put nicknames on their jerseys. So this, of course, has happened before, and Batista had Joey Bats, and Donaldson had Bringer of Rain, and stuff all over the place. I think it's neat because it gives the players some color. Somebody else in the room does not like the idea at all.
I do not like it. You know what? I didn't think they were going to do this after last year. I thought it was going to be a one-time thing, but I was quite wrong. I just think I think it's cheesy. I think I don't know. It just looks like I see the uniforms that the Blue Jays are going to wear. It's pretty much similar to what they're wearing last year. It just looks like, I don't know. It's just like, I'm just trying to find the right word for it, but it's just really a cheesy softball league or something like that. It almost, I don't know. I just don't like the uniforms. I just think there should be a certain professionalism when it comes to the baseball uniform, and I don't think those uniforms are it. So
absolutely, I have to agree with Niall on this one because we're talking about professional baseball league, and you have a player with emojis on the back of the jersey like a box and a burger.
Yes.
What is that about? I don't know. It just doesn't seem like a professional baseball league to me. And
that's like a novelty jersey. Maybe you put in the merchandise aisle or something like that. Sure, why not? But I don't know. Seeing the players, I don't know. I'm the old man yelling at the clouds here. I realize that, but I don't know. I think it looks cheesy.
I just kind of find that interesting because one of the things that we all enjoy is the crazy names in minor league baseball because it adds some color,
right?
And that's the thing with me. And they're only doing it for a couple of games. It's it's not like they're wearing a flying V or anything like that for half the season. I kind of like it because it does give some color to the players because at the end of the day, of course, they're just marching out there 162 times. And for 2 days a year, they get to put something they like on their back. It's like Brazilian soccer players. None of them have their names on their back. They've got their nicknames and stuff. I like it. I like it. That's a minor thing. I mean, there's other things we've talked about. We've talked about, the split season, right?
Yes.
How's that work? This and that. And of course, we've always talked, it's going to mess up the playoffs. But KP, you don't like the playoffs already as it is. Why?
Well, if you're a division winner and you've worked hard over 162 games to win your division, you want to go out there and play your first playoff game, your first postseason game right away. And it used to be, the season ends on a Sunday. Tuesday is when the playoffs start, or Wednesday if you're in the other league, because I know they like to have one league start first, the other league starts the next day. So Tuesday, Wednesday, you begin. Of course, if for some reason there's a tie for the division lead or tie for a wild card, whatever, you play on the Monday, and then the winner of that, the one game playoff goes on the road to whoever the division winner is and play on the Tuesday. So being the wild card, being like the team that had to play the one game playoff, of course they should be the ones that have the disadvantage. But now you're seeing you're seeing Major League Baseball cater to those the survivors of those one game playoff rounds, and the division winner has to sit sometimes until Friday to begin the first playoff series, and you're just talking about season ends on a Sunday. You sit Monday, you sit Tuesday, you sit Wednesday, you sit Thursday. You're sitting for 4 days as a division winner. And in baseball, you don't get that kind of a break unless it's the All-Star break. I would think that it takes people's timing off. It screws up your pitching rotation. So there's no advantage, in my opinion, if you're a division winner sitting at home on Friday, waiting for someone to come in, and you get rust. I don't know. It's just
there's no crying in baseball. It was just a couple of years ago. I can't remember which year it was, where there was a possibility of actually having multiple playoff games, because it would have been 3 teams tied, and this
it would have been absolute chaos.
Yeah, it would have been absolute chaos. But hey, here's an idea though to fix it up and add some excitement to it. Why not go to single elimination? Have more playoff teams, single elimination. See how that goes. That would be fun. You have a little tournament, give them a couple of nights off here and there. Yeah, I'm going to chime in now with what is eating my goat, and this has been going on for a very, very, very long time. It actually comes up every time we're here and we sit and we chat off air.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it's not going away, and unfortunately, they're not going away. And that's the Boston Red Sox. I cannot stand the Red Sox, and yeah, you know what? They're having a good year. There's no question. There's talk about them.
Great year.
They're having they're saying this might be the greatest team ever. They might be able to match the Mariners record. Oh, darn it. Oh, that didn't work out so well for Seattle either. But this happens with Boston all the time. They're talking about this guy that. No team has won more hardware while winning less championships than the Boston Red Sox. And we're going at it again this year. Now, this year, I don't think they're going to walk away with much hardware, because guys are going to take it away from each other. Betts will cancel out Martinez. Sale will cancel out, well, actually, there's no other pitchers on Boston. Might win Manager of the Year, but then he's got to make the decision of which playoff failure pitcher to start in the playoffs. So you see, I'm very confident in them. But I mean, now you understand this. KP, you're a Red Sox pseudo fan anyway, so you'll never get it. But why is it so easy to hate the Red Sox?
You know what? Without question, I mean, I've already stated I loathe the New York Yankees. But you know what? Actually, Boston is now taken over. It's just, when they won in 2004, good for them. And I'll tell you what, that playoff run they had, some of the best baseball I've ever watched. And, that ALCS against the Yankees, I mean, that was a terrific comeback, coming back from 3 games to love. But you know what? It's just, you just kind of see more people wearing Red Sox hats all over the place. And I don't know, just their fan base, their entitled fan base now. I mean, it's a great time if you're a Boston sports fan. You got the Patriots, that contributes to it as well. Patriots seem to win every Super Bowl under the sun these days, except for last year, thank God. But the Celtics, they could be a strong contender as well. And it's just, I don't know. It's just, Boston just kind of gets under your skin. And the other thing is, too, having gone to lots of Blue Jays games, during the last decade or so before moving out here to Vancouver, I was able to watch quite a few games, all the Boston fans. And I'll tell you what, when they just came into the Sky Dome, they were just kind of really, same with Yankees fans back in the day when those two teams were going at it and the Jays were struggling, and just, their fans just kind of got on your nerves. And I thought Boston fans, they kind of surpassed Yankees fans in terms of obnoxiousness. I mean, I guess with the Yankees, we've always been kind of used to it, but now with Boston, over the last 10 or so years, I think they're worse than Yankees fans personally.
Well, for me, when I was growing up, I used to root for the underdog teams, and the Reds.
They've never been an underdog. They're the Red Sox.
The Red Sox,
they weren't underdogs. They just underperformed and collapsed.
One starting pitcher in Roger Clemens, and yet they were able to contend almost every year with Toronto, and they had had guys like Greg Harris, journeyman, winning 10 games one year. They had Joe Hesketh, a left-hander from the Expos, having a big year one year. They had Jeff Reardon saving a bunch of games, and they had Tom Brunansky, not a superstar, but a guy that played hard. loved that team because they seemed like, underdogs, never won anything for a while. And of course, when they were down 0-3 against Oakland in the American League Championship Series a couple of times, I always thought they were going to come back and win 4 straight. Never happened. When they would go into the playoffs against Cleveland and go down 0-2, I thought they were going to come back. They didn't. 2003, I was crushed when they lost to the Yankees.
I'm actually enjoying this now.
Are you?
Yeah, this is good. This is good. Keep going. Keep going.
When 2004 happened, when they were down 3-0, the Yankees, I thought they were going to come back, and they did that time.
Yes.
But after, I think what changed for me was 2012, I think, when the players tuned out Bobby Valentine and kind of threw him under the bus. I thought it was kind of unprofessional. You guys are major league players. Don't blame the manager. Go out there and play for pride. I just...
I enjoyed 2011, though.
I got turned off by that. And, of course, the next year with John Farrell, they won.
That year I didn't.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so,
exactly. That's why it's so easy. John Farrell just adds to it.
Yes.
That's why it's so easy to hate the Red Sox.
Yes.
You're managing it. Well, it's the team I've always dreamed
It's a dream
of.
job, yes.
Leave.
Yeah, exactly.
Leave.
2011, I love that collapse against Boston. Final night of the season when Tampa Bay got in the playoffs and Baltimore rallied.
Beautiful.
It was beautiful.
Beautiful.
I remember they were too busy drinking beer, eating chicken wings in the clubhouse. So
it's interesting. I just pulled up this map on the interweb of the most hated team. Okay, and it breaks Canada up. And believe it or not, going across the country, there's really only. Well, there's actually 4 teams, but 2 of them, I can't see why they would be there. But Quebec, Boston's the most hated team. And I know why, because they go up and they vacation in Quebec.
And the Habs Bruins as well.
Bruins. So, in Ontario, Manitoba, it's the Yankees. Saskatchewan, it's the Red Sox. And then in BC and Alberta, it's the Yankees. Inuit is the White Sox. Don't get that one. And San Diego in the Northwest Territories. No idea why. There's got to be something to it. I mean, it's always good fun to just...
The Padres.
It's the Padres. It just...
Wow. Yeah.
It just blew me away. It's so easy to hate the Red Sox, but let's not kid ourselves. This team is on a tear. They've been on a tear all year long. Still don't like them, but they have been on a tear all year long. It is... Going into the last month and a half of the season, right? We've got about 6 weeks left. They played 122 games. Is there anything out there where you say, okay, it's been like this right now, but somewhere inside, I see this happening?
Wow. You know what? I'll be quite honest. Actually, it's funny when KP and I were walking on the way over here, we were talking a bit about how we thought Cleveland was going to be a team last year.
That's right.
I mean, they ran off that 22-game winning streak last season. I had a chance to see Cleveland against Seattle. It was the last home game of the 2017 season. Corey Kluber was just absolutely dynamite that game. And I just kind of looked at that Cleveland roster, Edwin Encarnacion. It was good to see him again, even though it wasn't a different uniform, unfortunately. But that's another story in itself. But I honestly thought Cleveland was going to be a team of destiny. You know what? Basically they got a ticket to ride. I mean, they got a free ride to the playoffs anyway. I mean, they're so far ahead of everybody else with Minnesota. I don't know. I could see Cleveland maybe doing some damage. I think if Corey Kluber, is Corey Kluber, and I think of Andrew Miller, if he is healthy. I know he's had issues all year, but he was such a relief ace. I just asked the Toronto Blue Jays about that in 2016. I mean, if Andrew Miller can get back on the beam, then you know what? I think Cleveland might be a team to look out for.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about the Red Sox and how they finished, the rest of the season, if, let's say, you're a Red Sox fan, and nobody here is, if you're a Red Sox fan, you probably don't want Boston to surpass a wins record that Lou alluded to earlier, because as we know, 2016 Golden State Warriors, best team ever, best record ever in the NBA.
Go Red Sox.
Win the finals. 2007 Patriots 16-0. Lost the Super Bowl.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
1995-96 Detroit Red Wings, coached by Scott Bowman, Hall of Fame coach. Won 62 games, most in the NHL.
130 points.
Lost in the second round.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe it's a curse. I don't know if fans believe in such a thing. But if you're a Red Sox fan, you don't want the Red Sox to go anywhere approaching 116 wins or whatever the record is, because that is just bad news. And also, we haven't talked about the playoff failures of guys like David Price, Porcello, Chris Sale. They just, these pitchers are, well, I wouldn't say Purcell is dominant, but the other two are dominant pitchers in the regular season, but come playoff time, they just disappear. I don't know. The pitching rotation would be what I'll be worried about.
You're making me feel much better already.
Yeah,
already
brings a smile to our faces. That's right.
Well, folks, we can't be angry at everything, but it's sports, and that's kind of the way it is. But we're very, very happy that you took the time to join us tonight here on Canadians Game Day. KP Wee, Niall O'Donoghue, I'm Lou Filippo, sitting in for Rob Fay here on the home of the Seas, TSN 1040. Good night.
This TSN 1040 podcast is powered by Magnuson Ford. The deal you've been waiting for is on now. Ford employee pricing. Details at magnusonford.ca.